Hello, Frank. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I'm not sure how you would describe yourself, but I describe you to others as networking expert. And can you tell more about how would you even describe or define networking and what does it involve?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on the program. Networking is two or more people working towards their mutual benefit. I think it's that simple. We can get off into a lot of detail as to what that means, but I think it's very basic. It's two or more people working towards mutually benefiting one another. A lot of times people really equate networking with sales and business, and that's true. We need to network to be successful in sales and business, but there's also a lot of other applications to it. And when I get out and I talk to groups and I talk about networking, and I'll ask people, do you think you're good at networking? A scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And a lot of people have the low numbers. And then I'll just start asking questions of them because a lot of people think they struggle. And I say, well, if you're married, how'd you meet your spouse?
Yeah.
It was probably something to do with networking, somebody connecting you, making an introduction. Or if you're married and you have kids, how do you find a babysitter? It's probably networking, talking to the neighbor, or you've got a friend who knows somebody. When you're investing, how do you find your financial advisor? How do you find these people? And so networking really permeates everything in our lives. And so it's really kind of a broad topic. Networking is just the thing that we do to build strong relationships in our life.
Okay. And when it comes to, and that's something that I was thinking about it today, as I was really thinking about networking, that we kind of all do it, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it happens. But let's say when somebody wants to intentionally start to do networking for their business, or they want to get to a certain point or meet certain people, what is a good way to start to do that, or how they could approach it?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and my consistent answer is this: find something that you're passionate about and find somewhere to volunteer with respect to that. So every community has need. We all have need. There's something in your community. There are things in my community where, and I guess people can define community and however they want to define it. I mean, if you do a lot of work internationally, your community is international, so find a way that you can contribute to that community. And that's, so you'll volunteer. I really like dog charities, so I'm going to go to the dog shelter where people are, turning in their dogs or abandoning their dogs. I'm going to go serve time there because I love to do that and I love to contribute. And the reason I think that's important is because when we volunteer, when we contribute to our communities, we're generally not doing it alone. We're doing it with other people who have the same passions that we do. And you're working elbow to elbow with those people, and they will eventually find out what you're about. Oh, this is what you do. I was on a podcast yesterday. Was telling this story. She's a copywriter. She's a writer. And I said, when you're off and you're volunteering, somebody's going to get to know you and say, oh, I didn't realize, okay, you do this. My husband, my wife, my friend might have a need for you, but they have developed a relationship because you have the shared experience, the shared love of this whatever the need is. But the other thing that happens is that people see you contributing, and we as humans are hardwired to want to associate, to want to help the people out there who are contributing to the world around us. And when we're off, let's say you really want to work in the dog shelter. And I might be somebody like, I really don't care about dogs. But you know what? I really like Astra because she's contributing. Even though it doesn't affect me, she's a good person. And because she's a good person, I want to associate, I want to help her.
So what if somebody would tell you, like, how is that helping my business? How is that helping me to grow my business if I start to do this? Because I think that's something that a lot of times people, as you mentioned, that people associate networking with sales. And then when it comes to this, the initial thought might be, so how does that help me to grow myself or get ahead in business world? You know, like what would be your response to that question? Because I assume oftentimes you might be even getting this question.
Yeah. Oh, I do. And I think what people need to understand is that just, you're getting out and you're connecting with people. I mean, there's 8 billion people on this planet, and somehow we are all connected. Mm-hmm. And all your clients, all the clients you will ever need are in that network. Somehow in that network, you just have to figure out how to get to them. And a lot of times what people do is they want the shortcut. They want the shortcut to find those people. And so they'll dismiss this opportunity to serve the greater good to try and find the person. And I can't tell you how many times that great opportunities have come to me from the most inobvious places.
Yeah.
You know,
can you share an example?
Yeah, I have in my business, I have franchisees. I have a franchisee in Pensacola, Florida. Mm-hmm. He contacted me in February. It was February 8th, 2021. He left me a voicemail. He left me an email. He left me a Facebook message. He wanted to get a hold of me. And so I talked to him, and as we were talking, and it's kind of a process to, get all the franchise paperwork in place. But as we were talking, I did ask him, I said, how'd you hear about me? And he gave me the name of somebody who I didn't know, but that person got my name from somebody I did know.
Oh, okay.
Who got my name from somebody else, who I was introduced to. Anyhow, when I step all the way back, it was 7 steps. And the person who set it all in motion is a wonderful person by the name of Casey Haston. And Casey is an executive recruiter in Texas, and she has a podcast. And she's somebody that I was just connected to online on LinkedIn. And it's like, okay, do we have this? People would say, why would you have this conversation? Is she somebody that could send you business? Well, the answer to that question is probably no. But I'm still going to have the conversation because I don't know where that's going to lead to. Mm-hmm. And I have lots of little examples like that where, well, another example, do you know who Lewis Howes is?
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty big name, right?
Yeah.
I got a couple of books here. You can see that. He's got this book here, right?
School of Greatness.
And then he's got this other one.
Yeah. Mask of Masculinity. Masculinity.
Yeah. Well, this is his first book. Okay. And I co-wrote it with him. Now, the story is, and I know him, he and I laugh about it all the time. In 2007, 2008, he was a professional football player. He got hurt, couldn't play, couldn't work. His arm was in a cast. And he came to a speech I gave, and he stuck around afterwards, and we talked. And we just struck up a friendship. And most people would say, don't waste your time with him. He's living on his sister's couch. Why would you waste time with him? I don't see where that's going to go. But, it's like he's an interesting person. And again, before you and I hit record, we were talking about mountain climbing. And Frank, how can I help you? And I said, well, sometimes when mountain climbing, you're ahead of the other person. And you're doing all the helping. And that's where he was. He needed help. He was down on his luck and he needed help. And I just figured, okay, I can devote some time to helping him. And from that, he said, hey, I'm doing a lot on LinkedIn. I want to write a book on LinkedIn. I know you've written books. Would you co-write a book with me? And we did. And we've sold thousands of copies of this. and it's helped me in lots and lots of ways. But if most people would have looked at that initial little introduction, they would have said, oh, that's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So my point is that you just get out there and you serve people and just trust that it's going to work back to you. Now, if you're telling me, hey, I need to get clients by the end of the month, yeah, this process doesn't work. I'm not going to help somebody meet their sales quota. I'm not going to help somebody make their business super successful by the end of the year. But over the long haul, this generates, it will help you build a big network, and that big network will pay off as time goes on.
Okay, so there's several things that I want to ask about. First one, do you know what was it? Let's say if somebody else might be in your situation, they might not help him. So
Right.
What was it that was different in your mindset? And was there any kind of click that you got about networking sometime previous that helped you to actually set aside his position or where he's at in life and actually help him?
It's just something that I have come to learn, and people who are really adept at building relationships through networking understand that you have to help people first. You have to do things for other people. And just trust that it'll come back to you. And I've bought into that for years. And it's, and I'm not spending my whole day helping people. I've got clients to serve and business things to do. But for me to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and go to lunch with this person, is not a huge investment. I have to go to lunch anyways. Okay, I'm going to pay for his lunch. That's not a big deal, in the grand scheme of things. So it's not, it wasn't a huge investment of time. I don't know. It just, where it came from, I don't know, but I'm glad I'm that way. I trust the process, and good things continue to come to me because I just help other people and trust, and I can't tell you where it's coming from. I just know that it's happening.
So what role does patience play in this? Because I think many times, similar, like you said, that, oh, like I want to learn networking, I want to get sales by the end of the month, or this many sales or whatever. Like how, maybe have you had that mindset where you want to get results from networking before? It probably was a long time ago, but if you remember those times, if you had them, how did that look? And do you know what helped you to start to focus more, as you said, towards like helping them instead of what's in it for me, or how soon can I get something back?
Yeah. Patience plays a big role. Early on, when I was an attorney in the United States, trying to building a practice, I was building a practice. I had probably been doing it about 6 months. I worked for a really large firm, and I left, and I wasn't going to take, these were really big clients, big companies. I wasn't going to take anything. So I was starting from scratch. And so it was about 6 months in, and things were going okay. But I had lunch one day with a woman I know, and she was a financial advisor. And I was kind of commiserating. I left a really good job. And I left a really good job, and I wanted to replace that income immediately.
Yeah.
Within a year, I wanted to replace it. And it was clear that was not going to happen. And I was commiserating. I was kind of disappointed. I'm sitting there over lunch, and, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have listened. Maybe I shouldn't have left my job. And I don't know that this is going to work. And she started to tell me a story. She told me a story about a speech that she gave 5 years earlier. She gave it to a group of executives for a large company on investing. And she said, Frank, one of those people just called me the other day. And she went on and on and on, told me about all the money this guy had and how she was going to be helping him and how it was a huge payday for her. And I didn't say anything, but I know what the look on my face was. And the look on my face was something akin to, Well, oh, goody for you, right? Because, I'm trying to feel sorry for myself, and you're telling me all this wonderful about you. And she read my face, she read my thoughts, and she said, Frank, when she finished her story, she says, Frank, you don't understand. You haven't been doing what you've been doing long enough to have this happen to you. You just need to be patient. And she's right. I've stuck with it. And, things that happened to me today or happened to me yesterday were set in motion years ago. My connection to you was set in motion by Salome Chung, who's in Miami, Florida, who, I reached out to or connected with in 2021. And that was set in motion by other things. And so you have to have that patience to let things play out. Yes, I understand people would like to have money, but you can't have everything now. If you really want to build a solid foundation upon which to grow a business, it takes a level of patience.
Yeah. And how do you, and that's something that, like, you were talking about this, where in another podcast I was listening about the trust, where you have to be patient because the network, it doesn't work as you would want to, or at the timeline that you would want to. You never know at what point whatever connection can actually pay off. And it's not even, that's something that I have noticed in my own networking experience, which is really tiny, small so far, but it's getting bigger. That if I approach the person with, and I want to also talk a bit about expectations. If I approach with an expectation that I want to get something out of you or from you, that person can sense that at some point, and they close off. And you can't even get to their authentic self, or you can't actually have authentic conversation with them. And you talking about trusting the process, I feel like many times people have these expectations that I want this to pay off. I want to see a result, that it's really hard to actually trust the process. And if you can't trust the process, it's less likely you will keep going. Is there a way how somebody who's starting off in networking, or maybe deal with this, I want to get it now, I want to get these results right now here. Is there a way to deal with those expectations, or at least make them or diminish them, or just let them go?
Well, I think what people need to realize is that you can't control what other people are going to do. So you could be having a conversation with somebody and like, oh, I would love for them to be a client. I would love for this to work out. I just see this, right? I just, you can't control it. You don't know that maybe they've got a son or a daughter they've got earmarked for that opportunity. Maybe there's a friend, maybe they're, you can't control any of that. The only thing you can control is yourself. And the only thing you can control is what you do for other people. You can't control what they're going to do for you. So, again, back to my mountain climbing analogy, I can lift people up and they may never stop to even thank me. And that's okay. I'll just, that says more about them than it does me. I'll just continue to help people. So, people who have that mindset that, hey, I need it now, it's quite simply, they need to change the mindset. And I've run into lots of people who have that mindset. They want the sales now. And I, in time, get them to realize that they can have what they want, but they're going to need to help other people first. And they just need to be patient about it.
So how do you change that mindset?
They need to decide to change. I can't motivate you. Mm-hmm. I can just give you the thoughts, and you have to come to the realization yourself. But it's, what I would do, you have to trust the process. What I did years ago was I had a little book, right? Just a little journal, mm-hmm. right? And I started writing in there when I would do something for somebody, not to keep score, right? Not to, oh, Ostra, I did this for you, you owe me, but just, hey, I introduced this person to this person. I had a call and mentored this person. I volunteered time here. So I just started journaling that because I wanted to know for myself that I was generous. It's easy to say, oh, I'm generous. 2 months ago, I remember I gave a lot of money to the church. So I'm generous. And our mind seizes upon that. And we just, and at that one instant that we think that defines us. And I think that's wrong. I think generosity and giving to others and supporting of other people is it really has to be a mindset. So I wanted to really test myself to check to see if that was the case. And so I just started journaling, and they were just short little entries, right? Introduced these two people, did this. And what I found is that the journal started to call to me in a sense that, oh my gosh, I haven't written anything in that journal in 2 days. I need to write in there, because if I'm not writing in there, I'm not living what I preach. And so I really became focused on making sure that I was, putting something in there every day. And then it was, okay, a couple times a day. And the journal starts getting fuller and fuller of all these little tidbits. And, nothing was huge. There was nothing, I gave this person $10,000, nothing like that at all. It was little things, but it's the little things that build throughout life, the little introductions, introduce you to Rob Bell, and Rob introduced you to a couple of people, and those people introduce you. And, the next thing 4 steps away, it's the perfect thing for you. And it all started with that little introduction. And so that journal helped me become very in tune to helping other people, but I just trusted that things would come back to me. And I know they will. I don't keep a journal anymore because it's really become habitual for me. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you're a very disciplined person, right? You set about, you've got a mindset. I'm going to, 90 days of ice dipping or cold showers or whatever it is, and it's just you have to think about it to do it, but it's less of a chore to think about it anymore. Yeah. I'm going to ice dip today because I'm doing it, I'm not debating, I'm doing it. And, for me, making introductions, it's like, well, I'm just going to do it because I think Astra would benefit from this person and they would benefit from her. And I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And it doesn't consume my whole day, obviously, but here or there, it doesn't hurt me to do those things. So I don't journal anymore, but I wrote a book about that process. I call it the Giving Journal, and it's something that you can buy it. You can go buy it on Amazon, I think, but I give it away. So there's a link on my website, frankagin.com. You just go to the Giving Journal. There's a place you can enter your email in, and it will get you a PDF of the book. So
that's awesome.
I don't sell it, just give it away.
And I love that idea because in a way, it's similar to that perception of what you focus on, you get more of, in a way. Yeah. So now the more you focus on, and that's something that even when a few years ago, when I really got into doing my habits, I realized that similar to what you said, even let's say with training, I trained more than I did. So I am in rhythm, but once I look at the data, when I'm tracking things, I see it's actually not as good as I might think it is. Yeah. And it might be similar with what you said with like being generous or adding like value to other people, that we kind of get this idea that, let's say, if you do it now more than you did before, but now you do it a lot, but you do it just more than you did before. Yes. And it's easy to also attach to this one thing that you did and feel like, I did awesome. I'm so generous because I did this like one thing or these few things. Yeah. Or even I did more than the person next to me, where it also comes in this like comparison where it might even like define you. But one thing that I also wanted to touch on that you talked about, that you help without really asking anything back or just having that expectations received back. And I think that's something that I now aspire to do as well. And I learned that from one of my mentors that, and he has helped me so much, that gave me idea that now whenever I help, I don't expect anything back. Because when you have that expectation, you now start to limit how much you help. And why would you limit that? Yeah. Because you add value to a person next to you. And these kind of things, like maybe you can talk about when it comes to helping others. How much does ego gets in a way? And have you had experiences where your ego gets in a way, where you're like, oh, this person is this and that. I'm not really sure if I get anything out of it. And how can somebody deal with ego in these situations?
Yeah, I'm human. I have frustrations. I question these things. Should I be helping people? Should I, because you're human, and I do question, okay, am I going to get anything back? But I try to push those thoughts out of my mind and realize that helping other people is just a way of, like, if I'm introducing two people, it's, I'm helping both people, in a way, I'm helping both people. And so why would I not do it? But there are times where I will pull back from helping people. There's a wonderful book out there by Dr. Adam Grant called Give and Take.
Oh, I have it. I read it.
Okay. Yeah, good book. And he talks about givers, takers, and matchers in there. And there's a point in the book where he talks about that if givers will change their persona if they're confronted with a taker. So if I'm talking to a taker and I know the person's a taker, and we get a sense of people over time.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a taker coming to me, I change my persona to almost being a matcher. And I'll go to the taker, well, I'll do this for you, but what am I going to get in return? Which is really not me, but that's, kind of where ego is coming into play. Because I know if I do something for them, I don't know that it's ever going to come back to me or to anybody, right? I don't, if I'm doing, I guess when I judge people, and we all judge people, but when I judge people, I just want to know that they're doing something for the world. So I'm going to, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to introduce you. I don't need anything in return because I know you're doing things for the world. And I know those things you do for the world will somehow or another get back to me. And you may never know what it is. I may never know it's connected to you, mm-hmm. but I just know you're doing things for people. You're doing a podcast. This is a service for people. You're allowing people to get their voice out there. You're helping other people. You're sharing a message. You're contributing content. I see all your stuff on LinkedIn. You have no expectation of those things. So I know you're giving to people, and that resonates with me. You're contributing to the community. That's your way of volunteering time, mm-hmm. at the dog shelter. That's what you do. You share these thoughts, and you might not get people liking your thoughts. They might not be commenting or sharing, yeah. but they're reading them. And you might be the reason that helps that person just get out of bed, maybe not commit suicide, lots of things you just don't know. And yeah, so ego does get in the way, but you just, you need to realize that life's not about you. It's not about me. It's about other people. And, it pays off. It pays off. It's funny. I was talking to my wife last night, was talking to her, and she said, my youngest son, a friend of mine, a business friend of mine, reached out to my youngest son, 23 years old. He's just started his career. He's a commercial real estate appraiser. And my friend reached out to my son and said, hey, I saw you just got promoted. I want to take you to lunch. I want to help you. I want to try and introduce you. And my friend is somebody that I've helped through the years, right? So the things I have done maybe aren't coming back to me, but they're making the way back out to my kids. So it's, I don't know, whenever we're looking for things to come back to us, it's selfish and it's ego driven. And we just need to try and push those thoughts out of our mind. And again, just kind of trust the process.
Yeah. and understand that, like as you said, it's not really about you. And one thing that has helped me was to now, instead of focusing on what can I get out of it, I just set a goal that I want to help like 1 billion people improve their lives. And now if I help somebody in their business to reach more people, that's a win. I'm closer to my goal. And I think that might be a good, I don't know, strategy to approach it. If you feel like you're ego driven, that you set a goal that is more towards contributing. How many people can I help today? How many people can I add value to? And then you can feed that ego by actually adding value. That's one way how you can approach it. But as you were talking about social media, there's a lot of ego in there as well, with all the likes, comments, and things like that. And as you were talking about social media, that I might not get any any or very little likes or comments or something like that. But a lot of times when either I stop posting or I get a bit more quiet, I sometimes have people reach out to me and they ask me like, where's your stuff? And those people, not always they engage or comment or like or share, but that's what you are talking about, is that they see it, they watch it, and they consume, and that adds value to them. But let's say if there's somebody who is creating content or putting it out there, what helps to keep going when you live in, well, we kind of live in a world where that's that expectation of I have to go big, or if I don't go big today, it's not worth it. How can somebody approach it where it's not the case, or they don't have that mindset?
Well, I mean, I don't have any of your post stuff, but I can certainly pick on you. Well, I'll pick on myself. I have a podcast. I also have a 1-minute daily podcast, and I've stopped producing. I'm kind of recycling now, but I tell people that I've done over 1,000 of those, and pretty much every one I did was something I need to hear. So I would imagine a lot of what you're putting out are things that you need to hear. Be disciplined, have a vision, change starts today and then tomorrow. Those are things that you need to continually hear. And I think that's a message for other people, is not worry about, just get the message out there. Even if it's a message you need to hear, people are looking at it. And most people don't engage on social media. I know a lot of people that just scroll and they look and they don't like, they don't comment, they don't share. And that's probably, 95% of the people out there. And a lot of people who do get engagement have it set up, they're in these pods where everybody's committed to engaging with one another. It's kind of cheating. It's not authentic. It's not organic. But I've had people who have come up to me and said, I really like your posts, or what they might do, speaking podcasts, they might mimic something that I've said on a podcast, just a saying or something like that. And they're basically letting me know, I listened to your podcast. I didn't like it, or I didn't like on social media. I didn't comment, I didn't share it, but I listened to your podcast. And that has value. And so I just think we need to have faith that, those things are out there. But, even if one person reads your post and it changes their world, you've done your job.
Yeah. So how do you keep posting? Because I think you post literally every single day, and I assume you have done it for years. What helped you to keep posting and keep showing up? Because it's easy to do it for a week, but to do it for years, it's not an easy thing to do.
That's interesting. I've purposely not posting this week for no.
Oh, okay.
No, this is the first week I've taken off in probably 5 years.
Wow.
But I have, like, all the things you've put together, right? Do you save those?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have, right? I have folders. I have a folder for all my Monday stuff. I have a folder for all my Tuesday stuff. I have a folder for all my Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I have a spreadsheet that tells me what I need to be posting. So I just go to the spreadsheet for, today we're recording, it's a Friday. I'll go to my Friday. What I normally do is go to that Friday spreadsheet, see what I need to go get. I go get it and I post it. I don't think about it. The only time I think about it is like during the pandemic, I thought about things because I might have a post about handshakes. Well, during the pandemic, people weren't handshaking. I didn't want to, I just skipped over it. But for the most part, I don't really think a whole lot about it. They're already done. And I think that's something that anybody can benefit from, because like I said, you have assets, you've done things, hang on to those, keep them in a file, because a month from now, certainly 6 months from now, in my case, a lot of like my Friday cycle takes me 3.5 years to get through. 3.5 years later, people don't remember the post.
Oh, no.
Okay. And what you're doing is very timeless, or, right? There's, what you said in your post yesterday works today, and it works next week, and it works next year. It's timeless. So that's how I have become, diligent in doing that. I'm inspired by you. I want to get more into video. I want to get into more short videos, I'm taking a lot of my 1-minute podcasts. I have the audio already done. I want to just put pictures and stock video to it as another way of getting that message out. So, YouTube shorts, posting them directly to LinkedIn, Facebook. And that's part of the reason I'm not doing things this week. I'm trying to get all that put in place. So I can kind of move forward, not in a different direction, but just trying to add a little more dimension, right? Rather than just, here's something to read, here's something to quickly watch.
Well, pretty much what you do is just adapt to where the world is going, because now everything is moving towards video. Yeah. So you're just being adaptable. That's pretty much what you're doing, Yeah. By the way, speaking one of the 1-minute videos, or audios for now, I was listening about where you said about first 7 seconds, where when you talk to somebody, I think before you ask their name, have 7 seconds. Can you explain this, like why you were talking about it and what's the logic or information behind it?
Yeah, I learned this on one of my podcasts. That's one of the things I love about podcasting is I learn so much from my guests, right? And what she told me is that when we meet somebody, so you and I meet each other for the first time, and we're meeting at a networking event. And it's that polite pleasantry. Well, when I'm meeting you, I'm looking at you and my mind is taking in all sorts of information. It's taking in the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, how your hair is cut, what you're wearing. You might be wearing a brooch, your name tag or whatever. It's taking all that stuff in during the time that you're saying your name. And because it's all coming in together, we tend to forget the name. So what this particular person's suggestion is during that first 7 seconds, making some sort of comment or something that, oh my gosh, the color of your, I don't know if I wouldn't say color of your eyes, because that's kind of a guy girl thing, right? It would just sound too weird. But oh wow, that's a really neat brooch you're wearing. Where did you get that? Right? Just to kind of get beyond that first 7 seconds. And you say, oh yeah, this is something my grandmother gave me. I love to wear it. I wear it every Friday. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, by the way, I'm Frank, So by delaying the exchange of the names, I've gotten beyond all the initial taking in all the sensory data about who you are. And that will help me remember the name that much better.
So is it like not overwhelming your system with too much information?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the early part of meeting, we would be overwhelmed with information. You naturally are. So you want to kind of delay it and say, okay, I'm through all the initial stuff. Now my head is clear. I'm settled into this. I'm going to learn this person's name.
Okay. And how do you organize contacts, or how do you even remember all of them? Because you can right on the spot say the name, how did we connect, even the whole path, how we connected. But which for me, I can remember how we connected, but I'm just starting like all this networking experience, you know. How do you remember all those things? And is there a system that helps you to navigate that?
I have been blessed with a good memory.
Okay.
So I think that's part of it. My daughter has it. She's very good with remembering things, you know, where places, people, you know, situations. So that's, you know, so that's been helpful. The other thing is I certainly keep track. Like when I've entered you into my contact, I use Outlook as my contact manager. I put in there, you know, Salome Chung, and I put in there some other details, you know, about you. And that way, if I have to go back and look, I can. But generally, I tend to remember those sorts of things. But that's how I keep track of them. And even when I'm talking with people anymore, I have them give me a little detail. I'll spend a little bit of time on their LinkedIn to try and just see. Like I've got a call later today with a guy who was introduced to me, and looking at his LinkedIn, he grew up very close to where I went to college. You know, so okay, that's something we have in common. You know, so I kind of put those things in my mind. But you know, you can tell yourself all sorts of stories. You know, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're going to be right.
Yeah.
And I have people telling me all the time, "Oh, I'm horrible with names." Well, part of the reason you're horrible with names is because you say you're horrible with names, and you're setting yourself up for that failure. And what I just like to tell myself is okay, I'm good at this. I'm good at remembering things. I'm good at piecing things together. It's not perfect, but for the most part, I remember things, and it might not even be in the moment. Like, you know, when you and I first started talking, you had said a couple things like psychology. Okay. You know, my brain's kind of going through a Rolodex, and it's like, Rob Bell, you know, I got a PhD in psychology. You know, and you know, I've got hundreds of contacts. There might be somebody else that, you know, oh, geez, why didn't I think of this, Frostra? I should have, you know. And so it's, I don't know, I think everybody in time will pick them up, but you know, you have to want to do it, and there's no magic to my system.
Yeah. And I think one interesting thing is that that's something that I understood from one person I know who is in sales, where he said that he can remember names really well. And he said it's just because he's been in sales for like 20 years. And that's, in a way, it's like the more you practice, the better you get at it. And I think that's a lot of times we think that, oh my gosh, I'm so bad with like remembering names and things like that. And again, we get so attached to this, maybe even part of identity, that I'm bad with names. So now if you keep, as you said, if you keep telling that, well, how much more likely is it that you will actually take action on changing that if you now believe that that's true? And he said that he has been doing this for like 20 years, and he's really quick with remembering names, and just look, he needs to find somebody and he remembers them, and he's calling like so many people a day. And he said it's literally like a skill that you build up. And if you do it for 2 decades, you will build up that skill, you know? So how did you make this networking sustainable and maybe not burn out? Because I understand you're an introvert, right? Or identify as one? Okay. Introvert, and that's something that when I started networking a few years ago, or let's say attempted to network, I would get so overwhelmed with it, because I felt like whenever somebody messaged me, I have to respond right away. And so all day I'm kind of being distracted, and I wasn't able to sustain it. And pretty quickly I quit. Is there any advice that you can give to people not to get overwhelmed? Because now especially I think introverts, that you're not used to talking to other people. Now you start to network and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so many people. How not to get overwhelmed? Because I think when you get overwhelmed, you stop doing it and you can't really sustain it.
Yeah. I think it's like anything. It's pacing ourselves. I get overwhelmed. There are days where I might have 6 calls and your mind is spinning by the end of the day. I can't have day after day like that. So I will kind of manage the number of people I'm talking to. I mean, at this point, I'm not available next Friday. Everything's booked, right? I mean, I just, if there's 2 people on my calendar, that's just the way it is, and then I can see where I have time to produce content, get work done. I do know people who, day after day, it's, 12 calls. And I just question to what extent those are really effective. Because I like to have a call, and then I like to kind of jot some notes and, okay, what are 1 or 2 people I can connect this person to? What's one way I can help this person? Because that's the purpose of it. So I just, I kind of pace myself. It's like eating. You can't, you go to the buffet and you can have anything you want, as much of anything as you want. Well, if you eat too much, you're going to get sick, right? So you just kind of pace yourself. And what are the things you really want to have? Yeah.
And so that another thing that I was thinking as I was doing research was, so how do you structure, you kind of started to get into that where you don't do it every day, because even, especially I think solopreneurs, because you have so many things that you have to do. How do you manage that, where a lot of times, and I have had many people that I have talked to, they're like, I don't have time to network. I just don't have time for that. How would you answer to that response?
Well, we all need people in our lives. I question people who say they don't have time to network. They may say, well, I don't have time to go to this event or that event. And that's fair. There are a lot of events in town I don't go to. And it's not that I don't want to go, but I get plenty of networking, through Zoom and other means. You don't have to go to a networking event to be networking. One-on-one conversations over coffee is networking, or a Zoom call is networking. So I question, when somebody tells me they're not networking, I question that they're really not networking. They probably are. They just don't look at it the same way. So I guess I don't know if I answered your question, or.
I already forgot the question.
Okay. There you
go. But an interesting thing when it comes to building connections and relationships is trust, because even talking about the power of weak ties, where it's more likely that if I connect you to somebody else, their trust in you will be much bigger already. How have you understood that process of building trust over the years of doing networking? How would you describe, how does that look?
It's really a gut feel. I don't think there's anything mechanical about trust. People who think it's mechanical are the people who will come in and they'll be very complimentary and, hey, call you buddy, hey buddy, oh, whatever. I just think it's kind of a feel that we have. You can, I look at people, I get a sense of the things that they say, the things that they do. Our gut instincts are really pretty good. I mean, I'm wrong from time to time, but if I feel that somebody, if there's something about somebody, I become reserved and I just kind of move a little slower. But there are people in my life that it's like, okay, I have a good feeling about them. I have a good feeling about what the things that they're doing and a good feeling about what other people are saying about them. And then I confirm that in my conversations with them and just, kind of looking at them and, how their mannerisms and to me, it works. And again, I've been wrong, but for the most part, it works out really well. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, all the time, trust builds at different speeds. So if you're selling candles, I'll buy a candle, If it's not a great candle, I won't buy another candle, right? So I don't need a high level of trust to make that happen. But if it's something where I'm going to devote a lot of time and attention, a lot of money to the relationship, right? Like, people dating, getting engaged, getting married, those don't have, that's why we don't get married on a first date, right? It's, you got to take time to build. That's a huge investment. And so trust grows at a different pace depending upon what the stakes are. And you just, you kind of need to, a lot of conversations I have with people, it's, the stakes aren't high. I can have that conversation. Do I refer them off to somebody? Okay, I need to have a little bit of trust. I'm not going to, I connected you to Rob Bell. I know Rob. I like Rob. I trust Rob. He's a great guy. He's been, everybody I've sent him to has said great things about him. So it just makes it easier for me to say, okay, I think you two need to meet. There are people I have talked to this week where, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm going to introduce them to anybody yet. I want to see.
Yeah. But even with connecting me to the Rob, you know him, so you can trust him. But how can you, let's say, trust me that will be a good connection to him? Are there any signs that when you talk to somebody that you look for something that you see that I can trust to connect you to this person who I already have this high level of trust with?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't put with respect to you in particular, I can't really put my finger on it. I think one of the things that I appreciate about you and well, I'll get on the phone with somebody and they'll be, I'm 25 years old and I'm making millions, blah, blah, blah. And I know they're full of it, right? American expression, you're full of shit, right? I mean, it's like, I know they are. I don't tell them that, but I just, why are you telling me this? Why do I care that you make a lot of money? The only reason you're telling me this is either you're bragging, which isn't good, or it's not true, and that's not good. So there's nothing good about telling me that. My initial impression of you was you are somebody who is somebody that I could help, and you were looking for help, and you weren't looking to overstep or overstate where you were. So that gave me a level of trust. And that you ice dip, that too, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah, ice dips are fun. So are there any other I don't say red flags, because I think red flags most of us can see, but subtle red flags that you notice in people, like you said, that they are bragging about themselves, where it's more likely that it's about me, not as much about us connecting or me proving myself or whatever. Are there some subtle red flags that you have noticed throughout your networking experience?
Yeah. I think small talk is a big thing. If I get on calls with people or have conversations and they're not comfortable with small talk, well, I shouldn't say not comfortable. They push to talk business real quick, right? Who's your financial advisor? It's like, we just met. That's just too fast. And, I want to have a conversation with somebody and just get a sense as to what they're about, I mean, not that it matters, but, are you married? Do you have kids? What are your passions? Which teams do you like? Because ultimately we want to have relationships, professional and personal, with people we have things in common with. And so if there's somebody out there that you really have very little in common with, religion, politics, experiences, education, all sorts of things, if there's nothing you have in common with, that really makes it hard to have any sort of long-term relationship of any sort. And so, I get the sense, I get a sense from people when we have conversations as to, the things we talk about. I had a conversation with a woman yesterday. We have to reschedule because we just spent so much time talking about my journey and her journey and just the common elements of that. We never, hey Sherry, we need to schedule another time to really kind of dive into business, because I want to understand what you're about, you know, and she wants to understand what I'm about. So I had a really good feeling about that, because you know what, she's made an investment to learn about me, and she, at the same time, she's been open to share about her. I think that's probably, something to look for. There are a lot of people that want to get on a call and they want to know about you. Tell me about you. Tell me more. Well, what about you? What about you? Well, no, we're going to talk about you. It's like, well, why? You know, why aren't, you know, why do I have to be the only one who's vulnerable? So it's the degree of vulnerability and, you know, truthfulness. You know, all those things kind of come together.
You know what makes a person maybe feel more comfortable to be vulnerable? Because technically, when you connect to somebody, it's something that I do want to know. But like when you connect to somebody, something that I feel like you talk to a stranger. So why would I be vulnerable? Why would I open up? You know, and that's something that I have an idea from what I have had in my experience, but I would want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I think that vulnerability stems from our level of security. Okay. So back to the example where somebody's getting on the call and, you know, they're late 20s and they're bragging about making all sorts of money and blah, blah, blah. And you see all their posts on LinkedIn in front of cars and things, you know, none of it's true, right? There's Photoshop. You can do lots with pictures. Now, I'm not saying none of it's true, but you just know with people that some things are true and some things aren't. I think those people aren't vulnerable because they're insecure. They're insecure that you will reject them with the truth. You know what? Hey, I still live with my parents. I'm not making a lot of money. You know, oh, I don't want to talk to you. You know, I think that's what they're afraid of. But you know, here's the interesting thing. I had a call this week with a guy who's out in California. His name's Umberto, and this is our second call. And he and I spoke probably 6 months ago. He was introduced to me by somebody, and we got on the call. And one of the first things that he said, I just said, "Oh, how's it going?" He said, to be honest, I'm still trying to land my first client." And that vulnerability, he wasn't repulsive, right? I wasn't like, oh my gosh, you know, why am I wasting time? For me, that vulnerability was very attractive in the sense that, okay, here's somebody who's lower on the mountain that I can help. I feel comfortable with this. Whereas somebody who's coming in and saying, oh yeah, I'm making 7 figures. It's like, wow, you're really high up the mountain. I have nothing to contribute to you. I don't, you know, I assume any kind of help you want to give me is going to cost me. So I don't have a level of trust. But somebody who's become vulnerable like that and said, you know, I don't have a client yet. And so when he said that, you know, I kind of just took a deep breath and I said, well, let's figure it out. Let's figure out how we can help you get clients. And I gave a bunch of ideas. I said, the first thing I need you to do is you don't need to admit to anybody that you don't have any clients. I said, you have lots of experience, right? You're like the plumber who worked for a big company and now has your own company, but you know how to unclog a toilet, right? I mean, you know what, right? So you don't need to admit I don't have any clients. You have lots of experience, you know, that's all that matters. So the reason we spoke for the second time was he reached out. He said, I just want to let you know, I just got my first couple of clients. Things are going great, you know. But it was that initial conversation where he was willing to be vulnerable. He took a chance. You know what? And there are people out there who would say, oh, Astra, you're just getting started. I just am not going to waste any time with you. And my feeling with respect to those people is you lose, right? You lose, you know, it's kind of like me and Lewis, right? You know, I could text Lewis right now and just, I mean, I wouldn't over ask, right? I wouldn't ask a ton, but I could text him and say, hey, what would your advice be for, you know, a good platform for editing videos, right? And he might have the answer, or he might say, hey, this is what we use, or you know what, contact this person. This person does it for us. They'll help you out. You know, to me, that's worth a lot to be able to have that person, you know, have him not on speed dial, right? But to be able to, you know, to reach out to him. And it's because I was willing to help somebody all those years ago. Now, I'm not taking credit for anything he's done, but I did help him when he needed help, and he remembers that. And I don't know.
I think when it comes to vulnerability, the less vulnerable somebody can be, the less security they have in themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think if you can be vulnerable, even like the example that you said about this, like the kid who is, well, kid, I'm 25 myself, but probably in mind a kid, where they're like, oh, I have this money, I have this car, or things like that. If you were so secure in yourself, you wouldn't have that sense of having to prove something, or having to prove that. And that's something that I have seen with many people where I'm confident, and now they go around and they thought they're confident, or they try to prove that to somebody else. If you were confident, you wouldn't have that need to go and try to prove that you are confident. And I think that's something, and even speaking of trust, that's something that I have seen so much, even in my experience, where when it's all about, I usually call it me, me, me society. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, what can I get? Me, 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 look at me, I'm this, I'm that. How much more likely is it that somebody will want to go and help somebody who is all about themselves? It doesn't emotionally and even logically, it doesn't really make sense. You know, why would I go and help somebody who is just about me, myself? What can I get out of it? It's self-centered mindset, things like that. And that's where I have seen that so many people that help me. And it's so ironic how it works, is that you probably have seen this a lot, where the more you help somebody, the more they want to help you back without you even asking anything. Even myself, I was like, how can I help you? You have connected me with so many amazing people. How can I help you? And I think that's something that, and especially because you do it without any secret agenda. It's not like you help me or you connect me to people with having this secret agenda, what you want to get out of me or anything like that. You just want to help, and you help. And I think that's where you build those real connections. And another thing that you were talking about, those that connection, building connection points where you find something similar with the person instead of just talking business. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking that it's literally the more you feel connected to somebody, it's hard to connect over business. You do this, I do this, not much connection. But if you have this connection with somebody that you're even emotionally involved, your family, your hobbies, I don't know how it works, but I feel like you trust the person more because you have this stronger connection. Because the stronger connection you have with somebody, the more you trust them. And so many people that I have connected to, I have so many similar conversations, as you said, that we just talk, and then we're like, oh wait, let's talk business. We're like, what do you do? What's your business about? Things like that. And so many people have said me that it's my first conversation doing it this way. And I told them most of my conversations are like this, because even when you do business, all you do is I think I read it in a book. I don't remember the book exactly, but the goal of the business is to help, to add value. That's how you get paid. And I think that's something that we get so focused on money and getting income that we forget about actually the purpose of business, or having a business, is to help, to add value to people. And it's in a way like it took me, I don't want to say it took me a while. I'm still young. It took me a while to learn this. But for my age, it took me a while to learn that. And once I started to focus more on the person and adding value to them, I started to see things shift, even in myself, where I'm like, I don't really mind how much I help you. Or if I know somebody. Oh, actually, one thing that I wanted to ask you about is that many times people, and I was reading a book, Never Eat Alone, and he was talking about it there, where a lot of times when people have this connection, they want to use leverage where they're like, I know this person, it might help you, but I can't connect you to them because I might need them at some point. So how would you, can you describe your maybe perspective on that mindset? And have you seen people do that? And how can that be resolved or changed?
Well, I think it's, I know exactly what you're talking about, where people want to be the broker, right? They want to be in between two people, right? Hey, there's somebody I think you really need to know. I'm going to kind of communicate between you. That's really inefficient, number one. And number two, it's annoying. It's annoying to these two people. But my philosophy is I'm not helping anybody by doing that. Because your conversation, well, let's use Rob Bell. We'll keep picking on Rob Bell. If I'm the go-between, Rob Bell's a great person for you to know, but I'm not going to introduce you. I will, you have questions for him.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be very inefficient. Number one, there's a lot of, it's really tripling the conversation if you stop and think about it. Number one. But the other thing is that there are things that you and Rob would talk about that I would never bring up as an intermediary, right? So if Rob's never seeing you, Rob's daughters are younger, but I mean, something like that might not come up, right? Like, you're 25, my daughter's 25, right? I mean, it's just like, okay, you were born sometime probably in 1997. So, those things wouldn't come up if someone was intermediary, if Salome was an intermediary between us. And I just think we're better off just saying, okay, listen, here, you two talk. I'm going to get the hell out of the way. And better things can happen from that. If there's something I can do to help, let me know, but I'm just going to kind of be out of the way. But I do know that there are people out there, they like to control it. And it's, they're not really being giving, right? They're being transactional. They're trying to make something from it. Yeah. And I've always shied away from it. Even when I practiced law, there were people who, hey, I've got a client that you can help, but you do the work, give it to me, I'll give it to them. They'll pay me like I did it, then I'm going to pay you. Well, they're making money, and it's off-putting.
And I think also it gives a sense that you don't trust me. If you don't connect me to that person, you don't really trust me, and that can affect like our relationship as well. Because now if you don't trust me, or like you don't trust that person, you have to kind of communicate through you. And even as you were talking, I was waiting for you to mention the word control, because that was the first word that came in my mind, is control. You want to be in control, but even as you said at the very beginning of our conversation, you can't really control people. You can't really control what they will do, how they will react. And also it's hard if you have this mediator is somebody who's actually helpful. But if you have this person in the middle, that's, you can't really get good impression of a person, of who they really are, because most of the times I assume these kind of people, they kind of reframe the conversation or the message so to send it to the other person, we can't really understand it properly. But speaking of introverts, I wanted to ask you, because you said in one interview, really, really, really good thing, where I think you answered the question, what do I say when I have to say nothing? I have nothing to say. How do I even start a conversation as an introvert? I don't really like to talk to people, especially people I don't know. How do I start a conversation? And your response was that, wait, I had to check, that it's better off to actually have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Can you talk more on this?
Yeah, I think introverts kind of have an advantage because extroverts need to be around people. They need to, I know people that if the conversation's not about them or they're not talking, they just can't stand it. They just cannot
Yeah.
stand it, right? And so they are continually putting stuff out, putting stuff out, putting stuff out. And you're not learning things when you're putting stuff out. But I think an introvert, and my advice is it's not about what you have to say, it's about what you get the other person to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go to events, when I talk to people, it's always trying to get them to talk, trying to get them to, learn about them, right? Just what interests them.
Mm-hmm.
Because from there I can start to learn, and I can have, I can fuel other conversations. I know in time they'll learn about me. But it really starts with me learning about them. And you kind of just mentioned it. It's, it can't be the business front. I mean, yeah, ultimately it's going to come down to business.
Yeah.
But I find that the people I really want to help in business are the people that I really have a relationship with. And that's just the way it is.
Okay, so how do you have a conversation with somebody who responds you like really short answers, or maybe they are introvert themselves that don't really like to talk about themselves? How do you have a conversation with them?
Well, it certainly becomes a challenge, and sometimes conversations just aren't meant to happen.
Yeah.
If I'm at an event, then it just it ends quickly. And some people don't want to have a conversation because they just don't. Maybe they're an introvert or whatever it is. But so it's just continually picking at it. My go-to questions are,
I was about to ask you some good questions.
Yeah, I have a whole sheet. I don't have a copy of it here, but it's not a whole sheet. There's like 7 questions. But in where I live, Columbus, Ohio, a lot of people aren't from here. They moved here from somewhere else. I moved here from somewhere else. And I joke about it and I say, well, people aren't from here. It's, I always say it usually involves a woman. I have to be careful because I'll run into somebody who's gay and, that can be offensive. But for my story, it involves a woman, right? It was somebody I knew who was going to school here, and that's why I ended up here. And, we didn't end up together, but whatever. But what I follow up with is that there's always a story to it. There's always a story as to how somebody got here, right?
Yeah.
You went to school in London, right? If I recall.
I went in UK, in Liverpool.
Okay, Liverpool. Are you a Liverpool fan? Are you a soccer fan?
I didn't really like football because I grew up playing basketball and that was my sport. But when I went to UK, especially Liverpool, I had one experience and it was so interesting that there's this coincidence where the Liverpool won and the whole street was like everybody. It was like you can't even walk around and it's all red and everybody's singing, and it was such an interesting experience. But I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I became more respectful towards football society. Let's say it that way.
Okay. See, we're small talking here. My daughter loves soccer. She's a big Chelsea fan. But anyhow, what were you talking about? Getting people to talk. Here, there's a. How did you end up in Liverpool for college? There's a story there, and most people want to tell that story. So if I were having a conversation with you, you're from Latvia. Okay, great. Have you lived there all your life? No, I went away for college. Okay, that's a short answer. Well, where did you go? I went to Liverpool. Oh, wow, that's really neat. How did you end up in Liverpool? Because that's not a common destination. And there's a story there. I don't know what it is, but there's a story there. And you might, well, I went there for college. Okay, but what did you study? Why did you make that decision? And if you keep getting short answer after short answer, you're realizing, okay, this person's really not ripe for a conversation for whatever reason. It might be a bad day. And you just don't waste a whole lot of time with it.
Yeah. So how do you know when you have to exit the conversation? Let's say if you're in a networking event.
Right. I'm writing notes here. 1997 basketball. I'm gonna keep track of all these things. So, well, we have talk about whatever. Basketball. Do you follow basketball in the United States, women's basketball?
I wouldn't say I follow. When I was a kid, I would watch a lot of and we had like NBA channel, so I'd watch that whenever I was able to get to TV when anybody else wasn't watching it. But that's the thing. I was, and I have seen so many people who are playing basketball that they literally know everything about basketball. I was the basketball player who I just focused on playing basketball and training and doing things outside of basketball. So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily expert in it or understand. I think I know more about the NBA than like women NBA.
Okay. All right. So I got us off track again here. Exiting conversations. What I tell people is when you go to networking events, don't get stuck in don't burn all your time in one conversation. And that can happen. Oh, I'm here, I'm talking to Austria, we're having a great conversation. This is so much fun. We got so much in common. She's talking about Liverpool and basketball. And you know what? Mm-hmm. If an event is 2 hours, 4 or 5 people is plenty, right? That's plenty.
Yeah.
But I'll have conversations with people, and it'll certainly start with small talk. So I might talk to somebody well, this actually happened. I'm at an event. It was snowing like crazy on the way there. So I get to the event and I talk to somebody, and I was talking to this young woman, and I'm like, oh my God, can you believe the snow we're getting? And her response was, oh, I love it. Really? Why do you love it? My husband and I, we go skiing. We're going away this weekend. It's going to be great. We're so excited. We're getting snow. And I grew up in Michigan where there's a lot of snow and a lot of skiing. I skied, but I didn't really ski. And so I can certainly talk, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go? So on and so I can have the conversation. At some point in the conversation, I'm going to push it over to business, not to try and sell them, but to learn about them professionally. So I might say, skiing's an expensive sport. What do you do to pay for it? And that's where she chimed in with, I forget what she did, but well, I'm a financial advisor, or I'm a coach, or I'm whatever. And we'll talk about that, right? And I might chime in with things that I do and so on and so forth. 20 minutes into it, that's going to kind of run its course. And we're really not going to talk terribly detailed about things. But I might say, this has been a great conversation. Assuming you don't break your legs this weekend on the ski hill, I'd love to grab a cup of coffee with you in the next week or so. And I really want to learn more about your business. And that's, I would say that, and that would be great. And then I might say, my goal here at the event is to meet 3 great people. You're one. I need to go find a couple others. Or I might say, there's somebody over here that I said I would talk to. I need to talk to. So I need to, leave the conversation. Or I might say, who here would you like to meet? I know a lot of these people here. Is there someone here? Can I introduce you to somebody, especially if they're new? And I might try and connect them with somebody else. Any one of those things works to move on from a conversation.
Okay. And when you have those conversations, let's say networking event, is there some kind of information you want to get out of that conversation or event or anything like that?
From the person, you mean?
Yeah.
I just want to create a relationship.
Okay. So that's what you want to get out of it.
Relationship. A relationship. Yeah. Where's this going to go? I mean, think about it logically. If you're talking to somebody, right? If you're talking to somebody and it's going to go nowhere, they're really salesy, they're really annoying, they're just always talking about themselves. You want that to end in a hurry, right? But if it's if it's something where there's promise and you want more to come from it, then it doesn't all have to happen now. So I can easily say to this person who's a skier, listen, let's have coffee. I'd like to know more, but I would like to know more in in a more, I don't want to say private setting, but a more controlled setting where we can sit down and we know that we've got an hour here that we're really going to focus in on business, or I'm coming to your office, as opposed to being at the event and really kind of digging in. Because when that second meeting, when you're having coffee, then the expectations are that there's a little more to it, right? It's a lot like dating, right? You're out, you're talking to somebody, and that person's interesting, but it's not, you're not going to get into terribly personal stuff. It's like, well, while you're really an interesting person, I like you, I would like to know more. Can I have your phone number? Can we go have a cup of coffee? Well, when you're going to have that cup of coffee, that conversation gets to be a little more personal. Do you have siblings? Do you have a dog? What do you like? What are your parents like? What are you studying? Things like that. And then the relationship advances from there. But if the initial conversation is really annoying and you don't want to ever have coffee with that person, you want to end it. But if you want it to go on, then it's okay that not everything happens in that moment, and it's going to happen in subsequent encounters.
So let's say when you have these conversations, are there some things that you look for the person when you make a decision whether to do a business with them or not?
Well, it certainly depends upon what their needs are. For me, if I'm talking to somebody and I find that they might, need our organization, I tend not to bring it up in the moment. A lot of times people are bringing it up for me to talk to them. But if I do bring it up in the moment, it's very non-committal. It's like, hey, we have this group. If you're ever interested, let me know. Right. And I'll just leave it at that. It's not this pressing, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's just, hey, this is what I'm about. If that can help you, please reach out.
And even this is kind of off topic, but it's something that I have been thinking a lot about recently, the integrity. How important would you say is it in business or in life? And maybe even how would you define it?
Integrity. Well, I think there's lots to integrity. It's certainly doing what you say you're going to do. I'm going to be here for our podcast, right? That's integrity. And a lot of people will say, geez, how can I get people to trust me if integrity is a part of trust? How can I get people to trust me if they won't give me a chance? Well, people give you a chance every moment of the day, right? I'm here on time. I'm answering your questions. I'm letting you talk. Those are all the little things that serve to build integrity. Other pieces of integrity are, I've been on podcasts and, I've been on time and I've done everything, and then they don't ever post the podcast. Well, and I know you will, because I see all your stuff, unless there's a complete debacle.
No, it's not.
That's a lack of integrity, right? I mean, it's like, you took my time to be on your podcast. I don't know why you did that if you weren't ever going to post it. So just, little, it's how people act, how they behave. The other thing that speaks to integrity is that there are people out there who they're trustworthy, but they're not necessarily competent in what they do. So let's take a craftsman for, example, or a handyman, somebody who's working in the trades. And they come to you and say, hey, listen, I'm going to replace your door. I need $500 to go get materials and the door, and I'm going to replace the door. And so I'm going to give them $500. And I trust they're going to come and put the door in. But they put it in the wrong way. Okay. That kind of goes to their capabilities, which is a part of integrity. You're holding yourself out as somebody who knows what they do, and you clearly don't know what you're doing. And I'm speaking from experience. I had somebody put a door in at my office. I gave them the money. They came in, they put the door in, they put it in backwards. It's like, it can't swing that way. It doesn't open up. It hits the stairs. It's not, It's against the fire code. You can't have a door opening up in the stairs. Oh, I didn't realize. Okay. Well, how about I turn it around? Well, then it doesn't work because it's, it's not opening to the room. It's opening the wrong way, So at that point, it's like, all right, nice guy, nice, trustworthy, just not competent,
Yeah. And even as you were talking about doors, similar experience, I think in my grandma's house, in grandparents' house, they had, I think, similar experience where they were doing some renovations or something, and the person that came to put in the doors, they did it the wrong way, or they didn't even and it was such a basic thing technically. And here in Latvia, it's a small country, so. And I was talking to, I think, my dad or somebody, I don't remember who, but we were talking about how if you give bad service, then first we will not go to you ever again because we know you did a bad service. We will not recommend you to somebody else, bad service. And also, if somebody asks us about you, bad service. And that's something that I was thinking a lot about how important is your reputation, and how I had one of my friends years ago tell me that really interesting thing, that first 20 years of your career, you build up your name, and next 20 years or the rest of your career, your name takes care of you. And I think that's something that many times when people want to get this quick success and this and that, get rich buck or quick buck, and they do that, but at the same time it damages their name. And now further down the line, it's much harder for them to build trust with other people because word spreads around. It's not like we live in isolation. We have connections and we talk to those connections. And that's something that I feel I think that's also where integrity is playing part, where you build. If you have integrity, your people start to associate you with quality person or quality business or whatever, but quality. And I'm not sure if there's a question about it. It's just my thoughts about it. But with the getting back to networking, one really interesting thing that I find is just first communication in general. I have helped so many people with communication, and I have worked on my communication pretty much since I remember myself. Not myself, but since I started my self-development journey. And one thing that I have learned is that in communication, first, it's really important how you communicate, or how you say words, or how you phrase the sentence, or what words you use, and how you read the situation and the person you talk to, but also listening. Because if you don't really listen, you can't really know what is the right thing to say. So can you talk a bit more on listening and the importance of listening?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're trying to get them to talk, you want to kind of dial into what's coming out of their mouth. And it's not an easy thing because our minds tend to wander. And so you really need to kind of dial in and not just ask, okay, what are they saying, but why are they saying it? What does it mean? What's the context? But yeah, I mean, it's important. It's one of those things that we can give to people. We can give our time just to be attentive and listen to what they have to say. It's if you're listening to figure out what you're going to say next, you're not really listening. And there are certainly lots of things that you can do to make it so you're truly dialing into what they have to say. I mean, mimicking things back, asking follow-up questions, whatever it is. And again, I think that's where introverts have an advantage, because it's like they don't want to talk anyways, right? So they're listening to, okay, how can I avoid talking? They're not really saying that, but it's like, okay, this is great. They're sharing about themselves, and I'm interested in this aspect about them, and it kind of keeps me from having to share what I'm about. so I can listen and figure out, what else I'm curious about.
And I think one thing that is really helpful is to be curious, because many times when we have conversations, and that's something that I have learned about trust as well. What makes person to feel like they can trust you is first, they don't feel like you judge them. And that's the way I usually explain it, is that you approach the conversation as if you were like a blank page. You don't have your specific judgments, or when they say something, it's not about what is right or wrong. And that's something that I noticed, that when you're curious, you don't really focus on sorting out what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. You focus on understanding. And when you approach it with curiosity, or the person with curiosity, really your main goal is just to understand. You really want to understand. And because I kept asking people, because so many people, they open up to me, even like in first conversation, and they trust me. And I'm like, what made you trust me? Why me? And I just kept asking that question. I kept thinking about it, because one thing that I have learned about people, that trust is really, really important. And a lot of times it's really, really hard to trust people, or feel like you can trust them, or you can tell them something. And that's why I just kept asking, why me? What about me was it that made you to trust? And the main things that they usually respond is, first, they felt like I care, but also that I don't judge them, that I give them space to talk, and I'm not in a place where I judge them. I just want to understand. That's why I got an idea that it's probably from that curiosity piece. I just want to understand. How do you think? How do you get to where you are? What's your story? Just understand you as a human. And I think the other one was that I care as well, that I'm not just asking questions to understand, I actually care. So if I listen and I see that you have a challenge, I don't just try to understand the challenge, I actually want to help. And that's where you see that caring piece. And that's the trust and the ability to listen. I think they are so connected. If you're not able to listen, and as you said, like, you have to listen and see what's between the lines. And if you don't really listen, and you're now thinking, okay, what's the best response that I have to give? Or when will I be able to talk about myself? You're not really present anymore. But it's so interesting how, when you start to focus on listening, how many things you actually hear that before you didn't see them at all. And do you have any maybe advice on how to improve listening, or how to become a better listener?
Well, I think you have to be committed to it. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing is to kind of have a goal in mind. I mean, I'm listening. I'm trying to say, okay, where it's going through a process, or in my head, it's saying, okay, where can I help this person? Where can I help this person? And trying to seize upon those sorts of things. I'm not, again, I'm not listening for what I'm going to say next. I'm trying to listen for what I'm curious about and what I can ask next to kind of keep them going. I'll interject things, like, you do ice dipping. Oh, I take cold showers, okay. So I'll, how did you get started into ice dipping? What was the genesis of that? So, I've interjected a little bit to establish some commonality, and then I'll, okay, share with me how that happened, how you got going into it. So you kind of have a goal, not really a goal, but an objective to, be curious, satisfy that curiosity. Where can I help? What do we have in common? Where can I help?
Do you have some maybe good recommendations on resources to learn networking, or just communication in general, books or podcasts or other resources?
I mean, obviously my podcast is, but I'm trying to think.
And your podcast is really good, by the way.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of good books out there. Networking, a great book is The Go-Giver. If you've ever read The Go-Giver, I really think that's a good book.
I think I just 1 week ago found it, or read it somewhere. So now I know I really have to read it.
Yeah. Yeah, The Go-Giver is a really good book. God, I have so many books. That's a hard question. Gosh, there's so many good books out there.
Do you know what was your first book that you read on like networking?
Well, networking is kind of a broad topic,
Yeah.
and it's really about relationships. The first book that I read as a professional was called Bringing Out the Best in People by Alan Loy McGinnis. It's a short 120-page book, but it's about influence. Mm-hmm. And somebody handed me that book, said I need to read it. And it really kind of kicked off for me a love of learning to read and understand. Because you read a book and it references another book. And so I need to read that book. And then you go to that book and that book. And the next thing you know, you've got this daisy chain of all sorts of books that you've read. And, but yeah, Bringing Out the Best in People is a really good book.
So as you mentioned, influence, how does, how can, let's say, somebody who's in leadership position, which a lot of times you don't have to have a job in leadership position, you can be a parent, you're still a leader. Yeah. How can a person as a leader influence somebody?
Well, I think the best way to influence people is just through your example. Especially being a parent, you tell a child, do this, and you're doing this. It's just, it's not going to work. My kids joke with me a lot, but I see a lot of myself in them and how they conduct themselves. And it was never really sitting down and saying, you need to do this. It's just, they just learned by example, and they saw what my wife and I did and how we work and how we interact with people and how we interact with them. So I think it's, as a leader, the best influence is just a good example. I once had a client when I was a lawyer, and his business ultimately failed. He expected his employees to, be at the plant at 6 o'clock to get things 6 a.m. and he wasn't going to show up till 10 o'clock. And it didn't sit well. Well, I'm the boss, I'm the president. It's like, yeah, but you're not, you're showing up after everybody and leaving before everyone goes. Nobody wants to get behind that.
So how, as a leader, what kind of example to show or what to focus on as an example?
Well, I think you just need to be, I think it's good having your own example, what's right, and just asking. I think you need to always ask, how can I become the leader that I want to follow? Right? I mean, close your eyes and say, okay, who's the person I would like to be associated with? And then really trying to become that person. You want people who are authentic. You want people who work hard. You want people who tell the truth. You want people who who will acknowledge your contribution. And it's really easy to figure out all the things that you want in life. And that's really easy then to determine what you need to be in life. Now, that can be a challenge, being that person. But I think that's where it starts, is just, stopping and with your eyes closed or a piece of paper saying, this is, if I had a leader, if I had a boss, if I had a team captain, if I had a, whatever, what would I want? And then just writing those things down and living that.
And I think sometimes a good example you can get from even thinking about bad leaders that you have had or good leaders that you have had when you have been in employee situation, and you think, let's say, what did I like, or that's something that I did when I was working while I was in university, that even though I do a job, but at the same time, and that's something that I even looked at and I kept telling that to people around me as well, is that, let's say if you're in university, it's a great opportunity to practice leadership because you will have group works, you will have things where you can practice that. And I would literally, we would have to create a presentation as a group, and I would just analyze stuff, and I would go to my lecturers and I would ask them, how can I approach this person who is kind of slacking off, or they're not showing up, or they keep canceling? What do I do with them? Is there something that I can do or try out? And then I go and try it out. Oh, it doesn't work. I go back to them, or I think of what else can I do. And I think that's something where a lot of times a good way to learn about what kind of leader you want to be, or maybe even should be, is to go through your experiences of being in certain situations and seeing first how people respond if you have been in leadership position. But if you have been in as an employee, then think about, what is it that I liked? What isn't that I didn't like? And is there something that, because I think it's when you work, it's much easier to do that because you are now in that situation. You're now emotionally involved. Oh, I don't feel appreciated. Write it down and think about how, if I get, or not if, but when I get to leadership position, how can I be a leader or a person who makes this person feel appreciated? But even with appreciation, I think that's another challenge where you can't really praise people all the time.
No.
Because then it becomes inauthentic.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes white noise.
Yeah. So that it doesn't. And is there, maybe in your experience, have you found a balance even with that praise, or how, at what point do you have to be more strict? At what point do you have to be a more like, you give a praise or compliment or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, you need to really, you need to remember that there's somebody on the other side of whatever you're saying. And you know, I just recorded on somebody else's podcast last week, and I said, life is or communication is messy. It's just messy. Actually, she was on mine. I said, communication is messy. People say things, and you don't know why they're saying them, or I'll say something to somebody and they react in a whole different way. That was the story I told a story about when I was in the working world. And I was relatively young. I don't even think I was 30 yet, but there was a woman I worked with who announced that she was expecting her first child. And then it's exciting, right? She's having a baby. And I told one of my coworkers, I said, oh yeah, did you hear about Rita? She's expecting. And his response was, oh, now I'm the one who's going to get fired. I'm like, well, why would you say that? It's just it was kind of an odd thing for him to say, but obviously somebody had said something or didn't say something to him that got him thinking that, you know what, it's between me and her, and one of us is going to get fired. And now that she's pregnant in the United States, if you're expecting, you generally, it's not that you can't get fired, but I mean, it's got to be, you can't get fired because you're pregnant. You just can't, right? Now, if you do something bad and you're pregnant, well, then you got fired because you did something bad. So he just thought that, okay, now that she's pregnant, it's got to be me. And it wasn't true. Where did you come up with that? So it's such a messy thing, communication.
How do you deal with conflicts? Or is there, because I think conflict is something that you can never really avoid that because of how different people are, or even one day you just might have a bad day. You don't feel good, or you feel angry for some reason. And especially, I think, not especially, but at work, it's, how do you deal with conflict at work? Because now, let's say if you have a conflict, next day you have to show up and you have to, let's say, sit next to this person. And like, how do you resolve conflicts at work?
Well, I think the best way to resolve conflicts is to not have them, to the extent you have. I mean, we need to deal with people, but we need to deal with them in a productive way. There's a wonderful book out there called Crucial Conversation. And it's a very intense book because it teaches you how to have conversations. And as humans, we are hardwired when facing a threat to do one of two things: fight or flight, right? Run away or stand and hold our ground. And that's how our minds work. And that's the same thing when we're having conversations within within a professional setting. You might say something and that offends that person, and they're gonna bark back at you. They're gonna defend themselves. Well, that's the fight portion. Or the flight portion is that you offend them and they're just gonna go quiet. They're gonna go silent. And what they teach you in the book is that whenever you're having conversations with people, that you need to always ask yourself, what do I want for this relationship? What do I want for me? What do I want for them? What do I want for the relationship? And the reason they tell you to do those things is because if I said something offensive to you, or offensive, something that made you angry, I've tapped into I've tapped into the primitive part of your brain. You're going to fight or you're going to flight. Damn you, Frank, or just go quiet. Yeah. So if you said something offensive to me and I'm, oh my gosh, why would you say that? I'm angry. If I can just stop myself and ask myself, okay, what is she saying? What do I want for me in this situation? What do I want for her in this situation? What do I want for us? I want us to continue to work, and I don't want to be picked on. I don't want to be made to feel this way. I don't want to offend them. I want us to have a good relationship. What that does is that allows me to engage my neocortex, the more advanced part of the brain. And when you engage your neocortex, you immediately silence the primitive part of your brain. Both sides can't operate at the same time. The primitive side's really fast. The neocortex really slow, but it's the calmer one. And so if you can ask those questions and engage the neocortex, then you have a more calm answer, calm response. And I might say, oh, why would you say that? I don't understand, and allow you then to, you seem angry. I have a sense, I don't know for sure. I could be wrong, but you seem really angry. And I don't want that. I don't want you to be angry. If there's something that I have done, I want to dig into it and correct something if I can. But that immediately calms the conversation down. If you yell at me and I yell back, what are you going to do? It's just going to escalate, So you want to try and calm it down. And that's, how you would kind of deal with conflict at work.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think even as you were speaking and describing it, I was thinking about self-awareness, how so many things come back to self-awareness where you actually are aware of yourself. And even when it comes to triggers, I know that I'm the person who becomes distant, or I freeze. I don't really get angry or react back. And for a really long time, I just realized that I just kind of go in that place. And over the years, I started to learn that, and usually I describe it that between the moment where you receive the message and you react back or don't react, there's a space where you can make a decision, or you can decide whether you will say something or not. What do you say? What will you not say? And over the time, you probably will not be perfect at the first time when you're like, you don't respond back. It's not possible. It's a process. But over the time, that gap, in the beginning, you don't even see that gap. Over the time, you start to see it. And then over the time, it becomes bigger, where you actually can now in that moment, stop, see the situation and respond, or even come up with proper response instead of reacting back. And that's something that I have seen, that I don't really get angry, like conflicts with people, because a lot of times it takes one person to resolve the conflict. Because if you are in a calm state, or at least you do your best to stay in a calm state, that person naturally will start to react to that, especially if they see that you have good intentions. I don't really want to argue. I understand you're upset, but I want to resolve this situation. And I don't want to prove you that I'm right or you're wrong. I actually want to sit down and resolve the situation, understand why you feel like this. Is there something I did wrong? If I did, is there any way how I can do it better? Or there's something I can change, or I can just explain my side of it. And many times I think we have this assumption where I think it's especially over text. It's so common where somebody messages you something and you're like, oh my gosh, they're now like trying to make me angry or telling me this or that. And you want to respond back. And one thing that I have learned, and I think it's another place where you have to have that vulnerability or ability to be vulnerable, is respond back. I feel like in this message, you're trying to, I don't know, attack me or, say something harsh, or you're angry at me. Is that true? Did I understand it right? And a lot of times they will respond, no, it's not the case. Or even with emojis. There's some emojis you associate with one thing, some with another.
Yeah.
And I remember there's one person who sent me a message and I'm like, I feel like you're angry at me because of like, that's what I associate that emoji with. Or no, I think the question was like, I feel like you're laughing at me. And they're like, no, that's like smiley emoji. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. But you know how easily it would be to go into argument if I didn't respond back asking, did I understand it right? And I think many times we go too quick to these assumptions that, oh, you're doing this to me, or you're trying to do this to me, or whatever, that we don't really stop. And I think that's where you need to be able to be vulnerable to ask a question, because you put yourself in a situation where you might look silly. I understood it this way. And they're like, that's silly. But I get unnecessary arguments. We have enough of those nowadays, Yeah. It's really easy to miscommunicate things, especially over the text. But that's something that conflicts it's really not something that we can avoid. We will always have them because we have different values and beliefs. But I think it's important that when we have arguments, focus on understanding the person and where are you coming from, and explain where I'm coming from. Even if we end up not agreeing, that's fine.
Right.
You have your truth, I have mine, and we just move on. But maybe you have something that you would want to leave the listeners with as we wrap up.
Anything or something I wanted to leave them with? Oh, yeah. Boy. We've covered a lot. Well, I think the main thing is that relationships are everything, and you need to commit to relationships. And they're, it's great to invest time into, and I look at my network all the time and say, okay, where do I need to devote time? Where do I not need to devote time? Who in my network am I losing touch with that I need to, or who in my network do I need to lose touch with? There are people like that as well, where it's like, yeah, this is toxic. But relationships are everything, I guess, is what I would leave people with.
Oh, I love that. And I so agree. Well, thank you for coming. This conversation was amazing. And I will leave all your details, all the information in the description so that people can find you. Maybe even continue this conversation with you. You never know. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Have a great day.